Hi, I'm Elian. My sister smiled at me the same day she stole my medication. It happened during her wedding, her perfect, glowing wedding, while I sat in a wheelchair at the edge of a room full of people who knew something was wrong and said nothing. I seized in front of champagne glasses and string lights. No one flinched, not even my mother. They watched. They watched me break. And when I tried to speak up, they called me dramatic. So now I'm asking, what kind of family lets you almost die just to keep the pictures pretty? I watched Verena raise her glass, and I realized I was here, but not welcome. The toast sparkled across the chandeliers like water over marble, clean, polished, and utterly cold. Her voice lilted with practiced ease, thanking every person who'd ever picked up a flower petal for her. But not me. Not a single nod in my direction, not even a footnote in the script she called family. Earlier that week, the invitation came late. No wax seal. No tissue overlay, just a creased envelope crammed into my mailbox like junk mail. My name was misspelled. Eliane Witt. That wasn't a typo. That was a message. I turned the card over in my hands, waiting for the embarrassment to morph into amusement. It didn't. I just sat there on my couch, alone in my small Savannah apartment, rereading it under the kitchen light, trying not to let the edges of the paper feel as sharp as they did. This wasn't the first time they'd pretended I was someone else, just the first time they put it in writing. I should have declined. But I didn't, because despite everything, despite a lifetime of being pushed to the edge of family portraits, I still clung to the idea that maybe, just maybe, I'd be acknowledged, even quietly, even as an afterthought. Verena's weddings were always going to be productions. This one, her third engagement, had all the makings of a southern-laced fairy tale. Lakeside estate, lanterns over the dock, string quartet under the willows. A spectacle tailored for camera lenses and second chances. Everyone said this one was different, that she was different. I knew better. Choosing a dress for the occasion felt like auditioning for a role I was never cast in. I walked through the boutique downtown, brushing past sequins and floral silk, until I landed on a simple green satin gown. Forest green, the kind we both loved as kids. It reminded me of when we'd drape old curtains around our shoulders and play queen and advisor. She was always the queen. The sales clerk smiled like I was shopping for someone else. "Looking for something to wear to a daughter's recital?" she asked, eyes darting to the chair I'd rolled in with. "No," I replied, softer than I intended. "Just a wedding." "Oh," she said, tilting her head. "That's brave." Brave. That word again. I didn't correct her. The day of the wedding arrived cool and gold. Autumn in Savannah turns the air syrupy with memory. The venue was 2 hours out, tucked between pine groves and waterline. As I approached, I could already see clusters of well-dressed guests laughing in the distance, floating across manicured gravel like bees drawn to gloss and Prosecco. Parking was a maze. Staff guided me toward a side lot marked Vendors Overflow. I didn't argue. The closer I got to the main entrance, the less room there seemed to be for me. Inside, it was stunning. Chandeliers, candles, floral installations crawling like vines across the ceiling. I wheeled carefully past a towering bouquet and nearly took out a waiter's tray. No signs pointed to accessible seating. No names marked on tables. Just a young usher, eyes flicking to his tablet, mouthing a silent "oh" before gesturing me toward the back of the room. Right next to the kitchen doors. As I settled into the chair, technically I guess just pulled up beside the table, I noticed the place card nearest to me didn't even have my name. It read reserved. As though they anticipated someone more important might need that spot at the last second. I texted Hayes. "Thanks for the invite. Found my seat. It's lovely." His response came too fast. "Glad you made it." He didn't look. He didn't care. Or maybe, like everyone else, he just didn't want to rock the boat Verena had so carefully set afloat. Music played, wine poured, laughter swelled, all of it moved past me like a parade where I was the only one still. Then Verena arrived. The crowd shifted, turned, glimmered toward her like sunflowers following heat. Her dress was predictable. White lace, deep back, pearls like punctuation along her spine. She moved with ease, like she belonged. Because she did. Our eyes met for a moment. She smiled. To the person behind me, and just like that, my presence shrank into the carpet. My body sat in that chair, but everything else, voice, weight, worth, drifted somewhere between the soup course and the champagne. Around me, guests chatted freely, oblivious. "Is that her sister?" a woman whispered. "I thought she wasn't invited," another murmured. A man leaned toward me, his breath tinged with shrimp and Chardonnay. "You're brave, coming alone." I smiled without teeth. "That's one word for it." Verena raised her glass under the main chandelier. "To family," she beamed. "To those who shaped me into the woman I am," applause. Flashbulbs, the room basked in her glow. I watched her through the crystal rim of my untouched glass and finally understood. I was here, but I was not welcome. So I began to count the ways they had erased me. It wasn't just the invitation with my name butchered or the table beside the swinging kitchen door. It was in the arrangements, the flowers, the centerpieces, even the menu. Everything was curated to mirror Verena's vision of perfection. Soft blush tones, eucalyptus garlands, golden forks. No trace of green. No hint of our childhood color. No acknowledgement that I'd ever had a place in her world. Even the food whispered my irrelevance. Every item, from the stuffed mushrooms to the miniature croissants, was a gluten-soaked joke. I stared at the breadbasket as if it were a dare. It might as well have had a tag that read, "Not for you." People around me sipped wine and swapped stories about Verena. "She always had such vision," said a woman in pearls. Even in college, she was the one who made every group project sparkle. Sparkle. That word always followed Verena like perfume. And here I was, the smudge on her satin. A hush fell over the room as Verena took the mic. Her hand curled gracefully around the base of the champagne flute. The spotlight wasn't just on her, it obeyed her. Her smile never wavered, not even as she began to speak. "To my parents," she started, her voice syrupy, "for showing me what unconditional love looks like." Applause. "To my Aunt Joyce, for teaching me how to make a home smell like safety." More applause. "To my college roommate, Amanda, who once told me, 'You're not intimidating, they're just insecure.'" Laughter. She paused, tilted her head slightly. "And to family, the ones who make us better." A sweeping statement, wide enough to include distant cousins, ex-boyfriends, dogs. But not me. I didn't even flinch. My spine remained perfectly aligned in the chair I was barely allowed to sit in. But inside, something detached, like watching someone rewrite a story you lived in and edit your name out. Then came the line that twisted everything into something uglier. "Elian's better now. She's off meds." It was a passing comment, almost tossed in with the same tone as "try the brie." But it was loud enough, clear enough. I didn't react right away. My hands remained still in my lap, fingers lightly touching the satin folds of my dress, but I felt the slow slide of heat crawl up my chest. "Wow, that's great news," a woman said beside me, leaning in like we were old friends. Her name tag read Denise, bride's coworker. I didn't look at her. I just nodded once. My tongue pressed against the roof of my mouth to stop it from forming a reply I'd regret. Across the room, Hayes was watching me. Our eyes locked. For a fraction of a second, I thought, maybe, but he said nothing. Just raised his glass to his lips, then hesitated and set it back down. No toast. No gesture. Just that blank, unreadable face he wore when Verena spun the narrative. She didn't just forget me, she unmade me. A memory surfaced, uninvited but sharp. The clinic, fluorescent lights flickering overhead. The doctor's voice, calm but firm. "Your new prescription will adjust the dosage. You'll need to stick with it consistently." He asked if I had a caregiver. I hesitated. Then I gave him Verena's name, because I trusted her, more than I trusted myself. I remember sitting in that sterile room thinking, she'll know what to do. Because she always did. Because I let her. Now I couldn't even be sure she remembered I needed the pills at all. A sharp laugh nearby pulled me back. Two guests were whispering. "She doesn't look sick," one woman said, not bothering to lower her voice. The other replied, "I heard she used to fake seizures for attention. Drama queen stuff." I smiled. Not a real smile. Just the kind you offer when you've already decided not to care. There are many ways to die in public, I thought. This is one. Hayes caught my gaze again. Something flickered across his expression, not recognition, just discomfort. Guilt, maybe. Or maybe it was the polite anxiety of someone caught in the wrong corner of a family scandal. He looked away, and I stayed. The cake was wheeled out not long after, a four-tiered monument to sugar and self-congratulation. Verena stood beside it, perfect lighting kissing her cheekbones. She raised her knife and gestured toward it with one arm extended like a magician's final flourish. For everyone who made me who I am. The crowd laughed. Phones flashed. And I rolled back. Just a few inches. Just far enough that no one would notice if I left the room altogether. No one turned around, not even her. I kept my eyes on the frosting while my mind did the math. She had thanked the parents who forgot me. She had toasted the roommate who never knew me. She had rewritten the facts of my health in front of a crowd, as casually as replacing a centerpiece. I wasn't sick. I was disappearing. Even when time erodes the sharp edges of memory, when moments become softened, rewritten, ignored by others, the body holds on. Quietly. Faithfully. The music in the garden changed, fading into a slow classical piano piece. Something wistful and sweeping, like a movie score. It floated in from speakers embedded in the ceiling, designed to be invisible. Designed, like so many other things tonight, to blend in. The buzz of conversation lowered into a collective murmur as the sun dipped beyond the hedges and the waitstaff began clearing plates. Guests stood and stretched, their heels crunching softly against the stone path as they made their way indoors for dinner. But I didn't move. I stayed in my chair, perfectly still, hand resting gently on my forearm. My thumb drew an absent-minded circle on the skin there, drifting closer to my wrist. Then I found it, the faint ridge, smooth and pale now, barely more than a ghost of what it had once been. But I knew exactly where it was. I could find it even in the dark. And I had. Many times, 15 years old. A Friday in March. Still winter, technically, but the air had felt like spring, warm, restless. Verena and I were late getting out the door. She had a date, and I'd misplaced my school ID. We were in the hallway, tension rising fast. She was impatient, hands flying as she scolded me, accusing me of always making her late. I remember the exact pitch of her voice. Sharpened, clipped, theatrical. I turned to grab my backpack. She shoved me, not hard, just enough. My foot caught the edge of the stair. I fell. 3 steps, left wrist outstretched to break the fall. The crack was clean and quick, like snapping a twig. The sound was louder than the pain, and I remember that sound, not the way it hurt, not the hours at the ER or the awkward cast I had to wear to school. No, I remember the pop, the moment, the betrayal, and then silence, until Verena spoke. She tripped, she said calmly. No panic. No guilt, just a steady voice full of practiced innocence. She was trying to push past me and lost her balance. Mom appeared in the doorway just as Verena passed me the ice pack. Her tone was so even, so controlled. She slipped, she repeated, like it was a line she'd rehearsed. I sat there on the floor, my lips trembling, tears threatening to spill. But I said nothing. That night, Mom brought Verena tea. She told her how responsible she was, how proud she was of her for staying calm under pressure. I sat on the couch holding the ice pack with my good hand, biting down on the inside of my cheek to stop myself from speaking. The pain in my wrist, manageable. The pain in my chest, unbearable. I learned something that day, not about bones, but about silence, about how easy it is to be erased. All someone has to do is speak with confidence while you're too stunned to respond. Back in the present, I adjusted my dress. The strap on my right shoulder kept slipping down, refusing to stay in place. I tugged it up for the 3rd time in as many minutes and noticed a strange looseness around my waist. It wasn't dramatic, but it was there. A subtle, annoying shift that made me feel like I didn't quite belong in my own skin. I leaned forward slightly, pretending to fix my hem, and checked the tag inside the lining. My name had been there. Written in permanent marker, as instructed by the boutique. But now it was crossed out, just faint enough to be overlooked. Beneath it, written a little darker, a little fresher. Verena. She had switched the dresses. Was it on purpose? Who's to say? She was the one who picked them up after the alterations. She insisted she'd handle it, told me I was too busy, that she'd save me the trip. Classic Verena, always doing things for you, always helpful, always selfless. Until you looked closer. That morning in front of the mirror, I'd told myself the dress fit differently because I'd gained weight. That maybe I was bloated, that maybe the seamstress had made a mistake. I gaslit myself before anyone else had the chance. But now I saw it. Even my dress had been rewritten. I looked toward the head table. There she was, radiant, charming, laughing like she was on stage. Her fingers brushed Hayes's arm as if she owned it, steering the conversation effortlessly, flashing smiles that never reached her eyes. She was dazzling. She was dangerous. And for a moment I asked myself, why didn't I just stay home? I had every excuse ready. I could have said I was sick. Could have blamed car trouble or claimed a last-minute work emergency. I could have spared myself all of this, but I came anyway, because deep down, there was still a version of me stuck on that staircase, looking up, waiting, foolishly, for someone to say what really happened. Maybe if I stayed quiet long enough, I thought, someone would finally hear me. Would you like a refill? I blinked. A young server stood at my side, holding a pitcher of water. His voice was soft, gentle. I nodded. He leaned forward to pour, careful not to jostle the table. His eyes flicked toward my shoulder. You want me to find you a safety pin? He asked in a hushed tone. I stared at him. You have one? He smiled, genuine, small, not pitying. Caterers always carry them. You wouldn't believe how many dresses fall apart after cocktail hour. He returned moments later, a small silver pin wrapped in a folded napkin. I adjusted my strap. He waited, politely looking away. Thank you, I said. And I meant it. For the first time all evening, I meant the words. That tiny act of kindness felt like a breach in the atmosphere, like a breath of clean air in a room that had been slowly choking me. I straightened my spine, my hands stilled, my breath slowed. And then I looked at her again. Verena, laughing, wineglass in hand, commanding attention like she always did. Every hair in place, every gesture measured. Her joy was radiant, but it wasn't innocent. She looked like a woman who had won. And maybe she had. For now. But I didn't feel rage. Not anymore. I didn't feel sadness. I felt something sharper. Strategy. I wasn't that girl on the stairs anymore. I wasn't the one hoping to be saved. I wasn't angry. I was calculating. And calculations, when done right, can split glass without making a sound. That thought carried me through the soft clatter of silverware and the swelling hum of small talk that filled the room as dinner began. I sat at my table, still half hidden near the server's entrance, watching people settle into their roles like actors on a stage. Laughter floated between clinks of wine glasses. Verena's voice carried across the hall, light and lovely, as she posed for yet another photograph. I reached for my clutch, just a small leather envelope, sleek and zippered. My hand found it beneath my shawl, tucked in the crook of my side. I unzipped it, slid my fingers inside. Nothing. I paused, thinking maybe it had gotten pushed to a corner. I checked again. Still nothing. The bag was empty, no pill case, no blister pack. No folded printout from the pharmacy. My heart didn't race right away. It stalled, like an engine just before it seizes. I stared at the bag, willing it to yield what I knew wasn't there. I opened it a third time. Still nothing. For a few seconds, I didn't move, just sat frozen, listening to the distant chatter, the background jazz now taking a melancholy turn. Then, like a floodlight snapping on, I remembered. Verena earlier. Her hand on my back, that faux sisterly pat as she leaned in to whisper, I'm so glad you came. She hadn't touched me all day until then. It wasn't affection, it was opportunity. Panic didn't roar through me. It crept in quiet, cold tendrils. I slid my clutch back onto my lap, adjusted my shawl, and wheeled toward the hallway. I passed a couple locked in conversation, a waiter clearing plates, no one noticing me slip away. In the restroom, I locked the stall and dug through my coat pockets, my makeup bag, even under the seat cushion. Nothing. I sat there in silence, the air thick and artificially cool. My hands shook, not from fear yet, but from the slow realization that if I didn't get those meds in the next hour, my body would remind everyone exactly what it was capable of. That's when the tingling started, down my calves, into my ankles. A signal. Not loud, not yet, but insistent. I needed help. But not from her. Not anymore. I left the bathroom and turned into the side hallway near the gallery room, where the family portraits had been lined up earlier for the slideshow. My mother stood there, talking with Verena's hairdresser and another woman I didn't know. I waited until the conversation paused, then eased closer. "Mom," I said, my voice low but clear. "I think someone took my medication." She blinked. "What do you mean?" "My meds are missing. They were in my clutch." I hesitated. "I think Verena took them." She looked over my shoulder, scanned the hallway, then stepped in closer. "Elian," she whispered sharply, "don't do this, not tonight." "I'm not making a scene. I'm telling you something serious." Her mouth tightened. "If you accuse your sister at her wedding, people will think, what? That I'm unstable? That I'm trying to ruin her day? I know exactly how that sounds." "Then don't say it." I stared at her. "She could have endangered me." "She wouldn't. You don't know that." "I know my daughters," she said, voice clipped. "No," I said, my voice hardening. "You know the daughter who makes you look good. I'm the one you keep in the corner so she won't embarrass you." Her eyes flashed. "This isn't the time." "There never is there?" We stood in silence. Then she turned and walked back into the main hall without another word. I sat with that for a while. Let it settle like dust. When I finally made my way back through the corridor, I bypassed the dining hall and wheeled myself out onto the terrace. The patio was nearly empty, save for a couple on the far end wrapped in each other and a stray waiter checking his watch. The air had cooled, crisp, the kind of southern autumn breeze that only lingered for a week before winter crept in. I let it hit my face. My hands trembled on the rims of my wheels. The tingling had worsened. My spine felt taut, the base of my neck stiffening. I could feel the edge coming, slow but certain. Inside, applause broke out again. Probably a toast. Probably another story that erased me. I breathed in through my nose, exhaled slowly, grounding myself with the railing nearby. "You've survived worse," I reminded myself. "But this time, you'll remember." I don't know how long I sat there before I turned back. Maybe 5 minutes. Maybe 15. The hallway lights had dimmed, and the hum of conversation had morphed into background ambiance again. When I rolled back into the room, no one noticed. The string lights flickered overhead. Verena stood in the center of the floor, swirling a wine glass in one hand, laughing as someone showed her a video on their phone. She looked untouchable. That was fine, because I was done being invisible. I rolled up to my table, slid my clutch aside, rested both hands on the tablecloth. My fingers curled slightly into the fabric. If they don't stop me, I'll stop them. He saw something, not enough to act, but enough to question. As Hayes disappeared back into the reception hall, the air around me shifted. There wasn't relief, not exactly, but something looser. Like a knot that had been tightened for hours was starting to give. I sat in the back seat of the car parked just beyond the side entrance, engine off, interior lights dimmed. It wasn't my vehicle. It was a rideshare the hotel concierge had called while I was in the restroom earlier, just in case. I hadn't planned to actually use it, not until I felt the subtle pull in my shoulders, the first twinges that warned me the spasms weren't far off. I should have gone straight to urgent care. Instead, I waited. 5 minutes passed, then 10. The muscles in my legs began to hum, a low, vibrating warning that only I could hear. My jaw tightened, and I rolled my shoulders, trying to ease the tightening without looking like I was bracing for collapse. I scrolled through my phone, checking the time. Still no text, nothing from Hayes, but I didn't expect one, not yet. I kept replaying the look on his face as I told him about the cocktail table. He'd flinched, not from disbelief, but from recognition. Something had shifted in him, something small but real. I wasn't sure what he'd do with it. The back door opened, and cool air rushed in. "Elian?" he asked. I turned. Hayes stood there, silhouetted by the lights from the building behind him. He knelt beside the car, hands on the edge of the doorframe. "Verena said you weren't feeling well," he said, keeping his voice light. Too light. "That's one way to put it." His eyes flicked toward mine, then away. He looked uncomfortable, like someone who'd stepped into the middle of a conversation they didn't want to hear. "You need anything?" "Not from her." He nodded slowly. "Figured you might say that." There was a pause. The kind of pause that held more weight than either of us wanted to carry. "Mind if I help you out of here?" he asked, gesturing toward my wheelchair. "I can manage," I said, but didn't move. Hayes stepped back and waited while I shifted from the seat into my chair. My hands were steady now, but I could feel the tremble building deeper down, like pressure behind drywall. He walked beside me, guiding me through a side corridor of the venue. We moved slowly, the walls narrowing, every sound amplified, footsteps, cutlery, faint laughter from the dining hall. As we approached the main hallway, the volume increased. Conversations, clinks of wine glasses, the beginning notes of someone tapping a fork against crystal. We paused at the edge of the carpeted area leading into the ballroom. "You sure you want to go back in there?" he asked. I looked at him. "Do you?" He didn't answer right away. "I just want to keep things smooth," he said finally. "For whom?" I asked. His face didn't change, but the silence that followed said more than his words ever could. Inside, people were being served. Waiters carried plates of lamb and roasted vegetables. Verena sat at the head table, smiling wide as the DJ called for attention. We stood in the shadows, invisible. "I need to go," I said, not looking at him. "I'll walk you out." We made our way toward the exit, through the periphery, past the floral arch that smelled too sweet, around the gift table stacked with envelopes that probably carried more congratulations than I'd received in a lifetime. The air in the parking lot was cooler than before. The moon had risen higher, casting pale light across the asphalt. As Hayes opened the passenger door, I paused. "Do you believe me?" I asked. He froze, one hand on the doorframe. "I don't know what to believe," he admitted. "But something's not right." That was the crack. The smallest hairline fracture in the porcelain mask my sister had painted over our lives. "She took my meds, Hayes," I said. "Don't tell me I imagined that." "I didn't say that." "But you didn't stop her either." He exhaled. "I didn't know what was happening." "You still don't," I said. "But now you have a choice." He held the door open longer than he needed to, then helped me into the car. I adjusted my seatbelt slowly, deliberately, buying time. Just before he stepped back, I looked up at him and said, "Check the camera footage, the one near the cocktail bar, about an hour ago." He blinked. "You'll see who touched my bag." Hayes didn't speak, but his hand dropped to his phone instinctively, thumb hovering near the screen. His brows furrowed. I leaned back in the seat, watching him through the partially open window. He wasn't looking at me anymore. He was already scrolling. When he stepped away and closed the door, our eyes met once more. "I'll call you," he said. "Soon." I nodded. He walked away. But I saw it. That hesitation in his gait, that flicker of doubt finally catching up to him. He saw something, not enough to act, but enough to question, and questioning is where revolutions begin. I sat in the back seat of that car longer than I needed to, long enough for my breathing to return to something steady, even if it was only pretending. My legs had started to tingle again. Subtle, at first. A familiar buzz that lived beneath the skin, just deep enough to be dismissed by anyone who'd never felt it. The kind of sensation that warned you, this body of yours, it's got other plans. Hayes had disappeared through the side door moments earlier, my clutch still gripped in my lap like a placeholder for something I'd lost that night. And not just the medication. Trust, maybe, space. Whatever it is you call that last sliver of belief that your family won't throw you to the wolves when no one's looking. I pulled open the car door slowly, letting the night air meet my skin. It was cooler now, breezy. The music from inside still wafted out in waves, string instruments, a familiar jazzy rhythm, muffled laughter that wasn't meant for me. Instead of texting the rideshare to drive off, I wheeled myself back toward the side entrance, re-entering the building through the same hallway we'd used earlier. My path took me past a mirror hanging over a decorative table. I paused and stared. My reflection looked steady. Too steady. The kind of composure that comes before something cracks. I didn't go back to the ballroom. I veered toward the hallway that led to the restrooms. I needed a moment. Maybe two. Maybe just a clean space to sit without feeling like I had to smile for people who didn't want me there. The restroom was empty when I entered. Fluorescent lighting buzzed overhead. I rolled to the sink and splashed cold water on my wrists, ignoring the tremble in my fingers. I looked down. Was it sweat? Or just my body anticipating the storm? I stayed there until I thought I could pass as calm. As I made my way back toward the lobby, Verena walked by. Alone. She smiled. Not the warm kind. Not even fake nice. It was the smile of someone who knew they'd already gotten away with it. "You feeling better?" she asked sweetly. I nodded, slow, said nothing. She didn't stop. Didn't even wait for a response. She kept walking, her heels tapping on the marble tile like punctuation marks. I watched her disappear through a pair of frosted glass doors. My hands started to shake. It didn't feel dramatic. It felt inevitable. I turned into the main hallway again. The music was louder now, more upbeat. The kind of tune that signaled dinner was wrapping and dancing was on the horizon. I felt the tension build in my back, my spine locking in a way that only happened when my dosage was late or missing. I was late, too late. And that's when it started. First, my fingers curled uncontrollably on my lap, involuntary. Then my foot kicked out slightly. My breath quickened, not from fear, but from the pressure. I could feel the stiffness traveling up my arms like electricity caught in a wire. I didn't make it back to my seat. I was under the main chandelier when my body gave in, right in the middle of the reception hall. I felt my head jerk sideways, and then my arms jolted against the armrests of my chair. A glass nearby fell and shattered. Somewhere, someone gasped. The music didn't stop immediately, but it stumbled, like even the audio had tripped on the scene. And then silence. Not one person moved toward me, not a single chair scraped, no hands reached out. "She always makes it about her," I heard someone mutter from the left. I couldn't see who said it, but it landed anyway, like a slap in the dark. The DJ cut the music completely. The silence was louder than the jazz had been. I was slumped sideways, fighting for breath, trying to still the spasm pulsing in my thigh. I was aware of my surroundings, fully aware, and yet paralyzed. A waiter walked briskly by, eyes darting to me, then away. He didn't stop. The room had frozen. Eventually, someone moved. Not Verena, not my mother, not even Hayes. It was one of the younger staff members. He came toward me, gently laid a hand on the back of my chair. "Ma'am," he said softly, "let's get you some water." He wheeled me out of the ballroom without further comment. We passed the buffet table, the candles, the floral arch. People stepped aside. No one spoke. In the hallway, he pulled into a small storage room tucked behind the coat check. It smelled faintly of plastic and floor polish. He found a bottle of water and pressed it into my hand. "Do you need medical assistance?" he asked. I shook my head. My mouth was dry, but I managed, "I just need a few minutes." He nodded. "Take all the time you need." And then he left. I sat alone in that storage room, staring at the wall where an outdated evacuation map hung crooked. Somewhere out there, my sister was laughing again, smiling for group photos, probably already pretending nothing had happened. I could still hear faint music starting again. Different now. Livelier. They had resumed the playlist. I wiped my mouth and looked down. My body had gone quiet. But inside, I was roaring. Moments later, a voice filtered through the hallway. A girl, maybe 15, maybe 16. "Wait, is she adopted or something?" A pause. Then laughter. It wasn't the words themselves that gutted me. It was what they revealed. They didn't even see me as blood anymore. Just a presence they couldn't place. A stranger. I blinked slowly. My eyes stung, but I refused to let them spill over. Instead, I reached into my clutch and pulled out my phone. I had one blurry photo saved from earlier, a quick snap I'd taken without thinking. The edge of a pill packet, under the cocktail table. The timestamp still visible at the bottom corner. I texted Hayes. Still think it's nothing. I attached the image. No caption, no threat, just the evidence. If this was a war, I just fired the first round. And war has rules. My sister just broke everyone. Back in the dim corner of the storage room, I stared at my phone screen like it could answer for everything no one else would. I watched the timestamp under the blurry photo I'd sent to Hayes and waited, refreshing the thread every minute. I didn't expect a flood of messages. Just one. Just something. It came 5 minutes later. One video file received. I didn't open it right away. My hands weren't trembling, not anymore. They'd passed through panic and landed somewhere colder, someplace that didn't flinch. I tapped the screen and hit play. The camera was angled from the ceiling above the side bar, near the corner where I'd parked myself earlier in the evening. It captured a wide shot, servers moving in and out, guests clinking glasses, a bustle of celebration. And then Verena, clear as daylight, in that off-white silk dress she had custom-altered to fall just right at the hip. She paused near the cocktail table, glanced around. Her hand slipped into a purse that wasn't hers. Mine, the small black clutch that never left my lap until that toast, the one she insisted I stay for. She pulled out a pill pouch, silver, discreet, looked down, and with the flick of her wrist, tucked it behind a stack of folded cocktail napkins on the table's back edge. No hesitation, no confusion. She walked away before the napkins even settled. The video ended. I sat for a full minute in silence, letting the truth of it sink beneath the surface of my skin. No denial, no excuses. It wasn't a theory anymore. It was fact. My thumb hovered over the call icon, but I stopped. I didn't want Verena's voice in my ear. Not now, not with this calm, this focus. I needed one more nail in the coffin. I opened my contacts, tapped Dr. Garrity's office, and left a message with the answering service. They called back in 7 minutes. "This is Amanda from Dr. Garrity's office. Am I speaking with Elian Wyatt?" "Yes," I said. "Dr. Garrity is in with a patient, but I saw your note come through. You were asking about your last prescription refill?" "I just need to know who picked it up," I said. There was a pause. She was checking. "Yes," Amanda said carefully. "It was picked up last Thursday by Verena May. She said you were too busy to come in. It matched the emergency contact listed, so we didn't question it." I closed my eyes. "I didn't authorize that." Her voice changed, softer, more alert. "Would you like us to flag it on your file?" "Yes," I said. "And can you email me the pickup record?" "It'll be in your inbox in about 10 minutes. We hung up. It took 5. I forwarded the email and the video to Hayes without commentary. No elaboration, just the facts. He responded with a single message. "I saw it. I believe you. What do you want to do?" I stared at that text like it was a door, a threshold I could step over or turn away from. I typed, "Not just make her pay. I want them to see who she really is." He replied, "Then I'll help." And just like that, something shifted. This wasn't just my war anymore. I heard the distant echo of applause again. The wedding winding toward its end, toasts, dancing. The glow of fairy lights stretched across rented tenting outside the ballroom, where people danced barefoot by now, dresses unzipped, shirts unbuttoned. Hayes texted again. "I have a friend, civil litigation. She's here tonight. Do you want to talk?" I typed, "Yes." 15 minutes later, I was back inside. Not through the front, but the same service hallway they'd ushered me through before. Hayes met me outside the restroom with a woman in a navy suit and glasses who didn't blink once during the entire conversation. "This qualifies as reckless endangerment," she said after watching the video. "Possibly attempted harm depending on the interpretation, and she accessed your prescription without consent. That's provable." "Can this go away quietly?" I asked. She shook her head. With what you've got? No chance. And frankly, it shouldn't. I nodded. Then let's do it. Hayes didn't say anything for a moment. Then, you're sure? I was never unsure, I said. Just patient. While we discussed logistics, file copies, chain of custody, digital backups, my phone buzzed with a message from a number I didn't recognize. It was a link. Airdropped from a guest nearby, apparently. It opened to a photo. Me, mid-seizure, under the chandelier. Blurry, distorted. And in the comments, someone had written, "She made it about herself. Classic." I showed it to Hayes. He said nothing, but the fire behind his eyes did. People started whispering. Word moved faster than music. A bridesmaid passed me in the hallway and stopped short. Hey, were you the one? Did something happen earlier? I didn't answer, but someone else did. A cousin I barely knew, who'd apparently seen the video Hayes showed the lawyer. She tried to kill her, he said quietly, like a confession. Her own sister. By the time we reached the ballroom doors, I could feel the shift. Heads turned. Glances lingered. The space that had once held me in the shadows now lit up, subtly but undeniably, with attention I didn't have to beg for. I didn't need to shout. I didn't need to scream. The truth had started to echo on its own. The wedding dress wasn't the only thing that would stain tonight. And unlike wine, the truth doesn't wash out in one rinse. I didn't roll back into the venue quietly. I wasn't in a dress anymore. No satin, no shimmer. Just a black sweater, flats, and the calm of someone who'd already buried what needed to be mourned. The main reception room had thinned. No more full tables or endless champagne pours. The music had softened to something background, mostly for the handful of lingering guests still sipping and pretending they hadn't seen what they'd seen. But they had. And as I entered, the air thickened. Conversations dulled. Eyes found me before I found a place to sit. I didn't need a spotlight this time. My presence was its own glare. At the head table, Verena stood with a fresh flute of rosé in one hand, microphone in the other. She looked good. Hair still in place, makeup flawless. But there was a stiffness in her posture now, a tightness behind the smile that hadn't been there before. "Thank you," she said, her voice rising just enough to cut through the murmurs. "To everyone who stayed. It means the world to me and Hayes." Hayes was not beside her. "And to our families, for showing us what commitment looks like. And forgiveness." Her tone dipped slightly on that last word. She scanned the room. Saw me. Her breath hitched. Just a little. Enough. "I know it's been an eventful night," she said, laughing lightly. "But weddings always come with surprises. What matters is love. And letting go." That was her story. Her final toast. Her attempt to wrap it in silk and bury it in a photo album. But truth doesn't stay buried. I wheeled forward, slowly, not stopping when people turned, not when someone coughed as if to distract, not when Verena's lips parted mid-sentence. I stopped a few feet from her. She didn't move. "You tried to erase me," I said, not loud but clear. "You tried to kill me, and you failed at both." Gasps, some subtle, others not. Verena dropped the mic to her side, her fingers tensed around the stem of her glass. "You're drunk," she said. I smiled. "No, you've just never seen me steady." Before she could reply, Hayes walked into the light, not from behind me, but from the side, near the DJ booth. He held up his phone. "We have footage," he said, "of her removing the medication, hiding it." Gasps again. "And we have a witness, and a signed affidavit from her doctor that Verena picked up the prescription under false pretenses." Verena's voice cracked as she stepped forward. "This is ridiculous. You're siding with her now?" "No," he said. "I'm siding with what's real." She laughed once, sharp and defensive. "She's always been the drama queen. Everyone knows that." From the back of the room, a bridesmaid muttered, "But she didn't even speak until tonight." That silence spread. It was the kind of stillness that wrapped around a room and squeezed. Verena looked around. Her smile faded. She saw it, the shift. She saw she'd lost the room. A woman in a navy pantsuit stepped forward, the lawyer Hayes had brought in earlier. "I've reviewed the evidence," she said, her voice calm, professional. "There's basis for criminal negligence and fraud. If Ms. Wyatt wishes to press charges, she has grounds." My mother started to say something, standing from her seat. "Don't," I said sharply. She froze. "You've said nothing long enough," I added. "You don't get to speak now." She sat back down. Verena opened her mouth again, but Hayes beat her to it. He walked over to the head table, pulled off his engagement ring, and placed it quietly on a white linen napkin. "I thought I was choosing someone strong," he said. "But strength doesn't hide, or lie, or steal someone else's life." He turned to me. "You deserved better." So did I. He didn't reach for me. Didn't play hero. He just stood with me. And that was more than enough. For the first time all night, I didn't feel like the one in the wheelchair. I felt like the one standing. The applause didn't come. No one clapped, but they watched. And she cracked. Verena stepped back, her heels catching slightly on the train of her dress. Mascara smudged beneath her eyes, shoulders sagging as if the room had turned cold just for her. I left without being asked to. Without a whisper. No one followed. No one called out. Outside, the air was clean, cold, honest. A room full of people just watched a wedding die. Quietly, no shattering glass, no raised voices, just a slow unraveling. An unspoken realization that something beautiful, once polished and rehearsed, had finally collapsed under its own weight. Like a performance where the lead actors forget their lines, but the audience already knows how it ends. And outside, in the soft hush of twilight, something else began. Something honest. Something mine. I moved into my new place the following week. It wasn't grand. A modest second-floor walk-up off East Park Avenue. The kind of apartment people pass without noticing, the kind real estate agents call charming when they mean old but intact. But it had good bones, large windows that let the morning light spill in without asking permission, and a view of a community garden tended by strangers I'd never met but already felt grateful for. The walls didn't echo with arguments or withheld apologies. They didn't remember the sound of someone else's laughter or carry the weight of words I never got to say. It was quiet, but not the kind of quiet that makes you feel lonely. This was a peaceful kind of quiet, a free kind. Hayes stopped by the second day with a set of bookshelves he promised didn't require instructions. I didn't ask him to stay. He didn't offer to move anything in. It wasn't that kind of moment. Just him, a well-worn screwdriver, and the kind of calm presence I didn't know I needed until it was there. We worked side by side, the rhythm of small tasks making space for silence that wasn't awkward, the kind of silence that felt earned. Outside, a light rain kissed the glass, threading its way down in long silver streaks. Autumn in Savannah was stubborn. The trees still clung to their colors like they hadn't yet made peace with letting go. I brewed tea. He drank black coffee. We didn't talk much, but we didn't need to. It felt even balanced. A few days later, there was a knock at the door. I wasn't expecting anyone. A courier stood there, young, polite, mildly curious. He handed me a single envelope. The handwriting on it was unmistakable. My mother's. Clean, precise, unemotional. There was no return address. Inside, a plain white card. Elian, hope you're okay. Mom. 4 words, no apology, no elaboration, no acknowledgement of everything that had been said or left unsaid between us. It felt like someone throwing a towel at a house fire, useless and late. I read it twice, then tucked it into the drawer beside my bed, not out of bitterness or longing, just to make sure it didn't clutter the space where healing was starting to grow. The next week, I returned to the clinic, not as a patient this time, but as a volunteer. They needed help with intake files, alphabetizing, cross-checking dates, maintaining some semblance of order in a world where chaos often reigned. It wasn't exciting, but it was steady. It was quiet. It was something I could hold on to. And I liked predictable now. Around lunchtime one day, a girl walked in, 9, maybe 10. She wore a brace on her leg and carried herself with the wary awareness of someone who'd already been stared at too much. Her eyes, sharp, curious, landed on my chair, just for a second. Then she quickly looked away, pretending she hadn't noticed. "You can ask," I said, my voice soft. She hesitated. "Do you ever feel broken?" I wheeled forward until we were eye level. "No," I said. "I feel like I was built for different roads." Her lips curved, not quite into a smile, but into something real. "That's cooler than what they told me." "I bet it is," I replied. "Want to help me organize these files?" She nodded. We sat there working quietly, the hum of the clinic swirling around us like background noise. Her half-smile stayed with me for days. Verena didn't go to prison. There was no televised trial, no public shaming, no handcuffs, no orange jumpsuit. But actions have consequences, even for people who believe they're untouchable. 2 days after the footage surfaced, her employer terminated her contract. Her license was suspended pending further investigation, and a quiet settlement followed, one that prohibited her from managing finances for anyone again, personal or professional. She didn't post the wedding photos. Her once active social media accounts went dark, save for a single image weeks later, a close-up of her hand holding a coffee mug, captioned, "One day at a time." No wedding ring, no comments, no explanation. I didn't reach out. She didn't either. One night, as I unpacked the last moving box, I came across a photo. It was old, water-damaged at the edges. Me and Verena, 8 and 13, arms linked, laughing, hair wet from the pool. We looked like sisters who trusted each other, who believed foolishly that childhood meant forever. I stared at it for a long time. Then I turned it over and placed it in the bottom drawer of my desk. I didn't tear it up. I didn't burn it. I just chose not to display it anymore. I won't erase my past, but I won't let it face me either. Hayes brought soup, homemade, slightly oversalted, too much celery. I didn't mention it. He asked if I wanted to watch a documentary about lighthouses. I said yes. We sat on the couch, side by side. We didn't touch, we didn't kiss, but the way he moved in my space, gently, respectfully, without assumption, spoke louder than anything else. He wasn't trying to fix me. He was just trying to be there. Not a hero. A human who chose better. That night, after the screen faded to black and the dishes were left to soak, I rolled to the window. The street below flickered alive, street lamps casting their glow, a couple exchanging hushed words on a porch, a dog tugging at its leash, a wind chime releasing a note that felt new and ancient at once. And I realized something. For the first time in years, I wasn't surviving my story. I was writing it. Family isn't who poses with you in photos. It's who shows up when no one's watching. She hid my meds. She rewrote the truth. But in doing so, she uncovered something else. I'm no longer afraid to be seen. The deepest wounds are often the ones no one else recognizes. The ones inflicted in quiet moments, behind closed doors, wrapped in smiles. Sometimes, the people who share our blood leave the deepest bruises, but healing doesn't always mean reconciling. Sometimes, it means reclaiming what was taken, your voice, your space. Your right to stand in the light. If it had been you in that chair, would you have stayed silent? Would you have left the photo on the wall? If this story speaks to you, share your thoughts, because stories like these aren't about vengeance, they're about validation. And truth deserves witnesses. Don't forget to subscribe for more true stories, not about perfect families, but about real ones.